What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Bill, and in today's video we are going to work on the suspension on the FJ Cruiser. Now, I don't know if you could tell in the video here, it's a little bit crooked. We already did the passenger side front. We got the new suspension on there. It sits about an inch higher than it was. It's not a huge difference. We are, like on this side here, we are at 37 and a half on this side. And then here on the driver's side, which we haven't touched yet, we are at just at 36. So yeah, we got about 1.5 inches difference here on the front. And all we're doing is changing out the front coilovers. Now, the old ones had some Bilsteins in there. These are actually good shocks. The only problem is I don't know how old they are. And when I did take the FJ Cruiser out and on the trails and everything, it did, especially the rear, started to get really loose as things warmed up, and it showed signs that they were getting kind of aged and wearing out really quick. So I did get new suspension, and these are, it seemed like it was already lifted about 1.5 inches to start with, because I thought, yeah, this obviously was not stock as I started tearing into things, because, well, first of all, there's no sway bar. The sway bar has been completely removed out of here. And then it had these Bilstein shocks. And so I think that was lifted about 1.5 inches to start with. Because this is supposed to be a 3-inch lift kit here. So, I mean, that would make sense. So it still had the stock upper control arms in there. So I want to go ahead and replace those and make sure we keep our angles good on that. So it's got these SPC upper control arms and these rough country front coilovers. I wanted to go with a whole new coilover because, like I said, I didn't know how old the shocks themselves were, and so it didn't seem like an upgrade to put like a puck lift in there and keep the same suspension components when I wasn't sure about the suspension components themselves. So I also got the rear lift as well, which is new springs, new shocks for the back. The back is also Bilstein, so I know some of you are probably cringing at the fact that I'm changing out Bilstein shocks and putting in some rough country shocks. But I think the rough country ones will ride just perfectly fine. And I know exactly how old they are. I know the specs on them. So I feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that things are in there correctly and knowing how old they are. So with that said, we're going to go ahead, get this side done. It's fairly simple. Without the control bar in there, that's an extra step we don't even have to worry about because that gets in the way when you're doing this, but I don't have to disconnect it or anything because it's already gone. So let me go ahead, get this jacked up and on jack stands, get the wheel off. So if you still had the sway bar in, you would need to lower these and disconnect the links and everything. And it'd be easier if you took the bottom skid plate off. Since I don't have that, I'm not going to bother with that. It's not in the way. So first things, we have 2 castle nuts here and here that we're going to need to remove the pins from. They used interesting ones up here. It looks like they just used a paper clip or something. And then here for the tie rod end. Yes, everything's dirty. I tried to clean everything as good as I could. before I brought this in the garage, but there's still mud caked everywhere. Let's get these cotter pins out. Now, I want to disconnect the ABS sensor. It's easier to get to it with this tie rod and disconnect it. But before I disconnect that, I want to go ahead and loosen up this castle nut while that's still being held in place, because it's going to keep your whole spindle from spinning, which will make the whole thing easier to loosen up, which is, I think this is 22, no, 19 then, probably. Yeah, it's 19. And I don't want to tighten it. I'm going to loosen it. I'll go ahead and leave that on there for now. But I wanted to go ahead and get that loose. Like I said, before I took this one off, because once this is off and everything moves freely, it's a little harder to work with. So now I'm going to go ahead and loosen that up. And then this, I want to go ahead and disconnect this. In order to get it out, you could use like a pickle fork or whatever. Normally you could just bang on, don't want to hit the threads or anything, but just actually around on the metal out here. It's not going to hurt anything, and if you smack it a good couple of times, it'll loosen up and drop out of there. And if it doesn't want to come out, you could get some PB Blaster, spray it in there and let that soak. There it goes. See, it's coming out now. Now we're loose. And now we can move our knuckle any which way we need to. And first thing, I'm going to disconnect. I'm going to disconnect this connector here. You can see it'll slide off of there. Probably not very easily. So, how well you can see that, but I got the screwdriver in there keeping that tab up. And I'm just going to push it off there. And see there's dirt and stuff in there keeping that from coming out real easily. Now there's just these two pins here. Plastic rivet things. Just want to try to get under there with my screwdriver a little bit. And come in with a pry tool here. Pop that out. And then there's another one over here. So got those off of there. This bolt up here that's got the ABS line connected, that's connected to the upper control arm. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this bolt here off the knuckle too, which is holding the brake line and the ABS cable to it, just so it has some freedom to move around. So when I pull this knuckle out, if this falls out at all, it's not going to yank on anything too hard. You could remove the caliper, hang it up out of the way. I don't think it's really necessary for this. So yeah, I'm just going to disconnect this bolt. Just like, it's at about a 12 probably. Do that, and then the upper one looks like a 10. Alright, so we're free here. We're free there. Nothing should pull too hard. That's why I got this other jack stand over here as well. So I'll set this under and hold this up. Again, just so we're not pulling on those brake lines or the ABS line or anything too hard. So now they got all that loosened up, it's going to be the same as taking this out, and I'm just going to go ahead, bang right here, maybe both sides if I need to. I'm going to go ahead and leave this bolt in so when it does drop, it doesn't drop completely off. And again, I have my jack stand down here too to catch this, so it shouldn't drop too far too fast. And like that, just pops out of there. So now our knuckles disconnected. Only thing holding this bottom up now is the shock itself and the lower control arm. So we got bolt here. This is 19 again, I think. Yeah. Now before I take this bolt out, I'm going to go ahead and grab my jack, reposition it under here so I can control how much pressure is on this lower control arm, so if in case I need to manipulate it at all. And again, because I'll eventually want to take this jack stand out so I can lower things a bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and reposition the jack. So just got it snug there. Try to keep some pressure off of that bolt so we can Alright, so that bolt's out. Now we just have these 3 bolts up along the top side to loosen up of the shock tower. Not the big one, just these 3 around the top. I'm going to go ahead and jack that up a little bit more, make sure there's no extra pressure on there. So I got this as well. You see that I was holding the wrench on there and just giving it a few taps with the hammer. That's the only way I could get that thing loose. I couldn't get the cheater bar on there. So if you don't have a box end wrench, ratchet wrench, I don't know how you're gonna get that back bolt out of there, but we got it out. Move our jack stand. Seem to be all right there. We'll go ahead and lower the jack down to where we're actually off of there now. We push down, should be able to just pull that spring out of there now, and we're good to go. And I'm going to go ahead and jack this up just so it has some tension on there for right now, and we're not pulling on those brake lines. Because I'm going to go ahead and do the upper control arm before we put the new coilover in there. This upper control arm bolt, it's just one long bolt, so we're going to have to be able to pull it all the way out. So I see I got this wire bundle that's going to be in the way. Come up front. You see, there's our bolt right there. It's going to come straight out here. It's going to end up hitting our battery tray as well. So I'm going to go ahead and actually pull this battery and pull the battery tray out. That way we have room to pull that bolt straight through once we get it loosened. Now we have the battery out, the battery tray out. There's a 10mm bolt holding this clamp in, and then just move that out of the way. Now our bolt there we should be able to pull our bolt straight out. There is this one radiator tube here, or oil, I guess that's transmission cooler, or I don't know. We got a cooling line here that might be a little bit in the way, but we should be able to work our way past that. So get down here. Okay, push that around so it's underneath. Now, especially if you're trying to get a socket on here, this side it's not too bad, but when we go to get the torque wrench on there, this is going to be in the way. On the other side, it's even more in the way. So just a 12mm bolt here. We could take that out and move this whole brake line out of our way. That way we can get a good socket on there, and especially when we go to torque everything down, we can get the torque wrench in there with no problem. This side you have just enough room. You can get an open-end wrench on there, anything to hold it in position. But really, once you start getting this tightened, that doesn't even really turn, and you can get the whole thing torqued down pretty easily. Now, if you have anything, this should be kind of sealed up and harder to access, especially on this side. As you can see, it's wide open. This thing's just super brittle, falling apart. I have a new one on order. It's supposed to be a thicker actual rubber piece, so hopefully it doesn't get brittle and fall apart like that. But that's why my engine bay got so muddy. Well, part of the reason it got so muddy. But yeah, I'm just keeping those in there now so I know where all the attachment points are. So when I take it off, I could put things back together. But so if you do have those, you just have to get a panel tool and pull those out, and to get access to all this. So now I guess pull that up and move that out of your way so you have access to that bolt. That bolt is, I think, 22. Nope, 19, just like the others. Oh, that's 17. Where's my 19? And well, actually it's just loose enough to come all the way off. Alright, so now our bolt, like I said, should just push all the way through. It looks like it's hitting right up here, and there's no room really, but we're at the end of it, so we should be able to, there we go. Now we got our bolt out, we'll just leave it up here, and our control arm should pull right off. That's the old washer that was on there. We can go ahead and get rid of that. We got some new washers that have been supplied. And then to put this back on, it's going to be very similar. We're just going to put that in, put the bolt through, and we're in business. I'm going to go ahead and kind of run the bolt down here and just kind of get this lined up a little bit so I can get the bolt started down here, and then I'll put it in position and push the bolt through. Just hold it. Bolts back through. Washer, the cup side goes out. And then put our bolt back on there, which is right here. And not going to tighten this up yet. Just kind of hand tighten it on there. Because you want this to move freely for now until you get everything put together, and then you want to put the car down on its weight so that this is in its natural resting position before you torque it. So keep it loose, and the instructions say to put the wheels back on, put it on the ground, and then torque it. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to do that, so what I'll do instead is I'll put everything back together. But instead of putting the wheel on, I'll just put the jack stand on here, lower the car down on the ground, and I'll just sit on the jack stand instead of sitting on the tire. That way I can still get in here and with access to everything. It'll be pretty much in its natural position, and then it could torque everything. But while I got this all apart, I'm going to go ahead and clean this all up a little bit. In here, I got some dirt and grease in here. So I'm going to get this cleaned up a little bit, and then we'll put our other shock in, get everything torqued down, and put it back together. Okay, ready to put the new coilover in there. I'm going to go ahead and lower this down. Keep an eye on our brake line there, make sure we're not pulling it. All right. Now the new shock came with its own bolts, so we can get rid of the old ones. Just let it go in. Just like it came out. This part would be easier with the second person. So you had somebody push down. I got pushed down on the lower control arm. And push in with the shock. So now we're pretty much in position. I'm going to go ahead and put these bolts on top. Not going to tighten those down just yet. Alright, so we're just hand tight there. I'm going to grab a big screwdriver or panel wrench or anything. We want to get that bottom hole lined up. So we can get the bolt in there. And there we go. We are connected. And put our old washer a nut on there. Back under there. Jack out of there for now, just so I can clean up underneath there, because you see I got a huge mess of stuff that's falling out as I was banging on things, and as I was cleaning, a whole bunch of dirt and crap fell out. So I get that cleaned up. Now we can start putting everything back together. So got to put the bushing up top, and that's going to fit we got a big nut, big washer, and then there's a flat plate. The plate's going to stay on the bottom. It's actually going to slide right into position there. And then top washer and nut fit in there. Now for initial settings, you can just go right in, because this will slide. This gives you the adjustable camber, so you can get your settings exactly right, so you can get your alignment perfectly right with the lift on there. So we're just going to set that in the center to get started. I'm not going to mess with the camber myself. I'm just going to go ahead and set it in the center. I believe the torque for that is 85 or it's 100 foot-pounds. I'm going to look that up real quick. But I'm just going to set, like I said, I'm just going to set it in the center, which is the starting point, and torque that down there. And then I'll take it for an alignment, and the alignment shop can worry about where the best setting for that is. Let's see. And that is 1 1/4 for that. So let me double check what the torque on that is. All right, I was off. It's 150. This gets torqued to 150. Now, I did get a new supplied castle nut with this, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. Now, go ahead and jack this up enough that the bolt falls in there. I knew there was a 22 one here somewhere. There it is. Just gonna go ahead and snug this for right now. Oops. This will go back on here, just like on the stock upper control arm. There is a bolt hole for that, so we could put the bolt back on there. We can go ahead and run our ABS cable back through. Plug those 2 plastic pieces in. Plug the cable in. Now we're resting on here, so I'm not going to get underneath there or anything, but I just got to get this bolt, which is the 19 millimeter. And we should be at 85 foot-pounds is what we want to torque that to. Here's why I wanted to leave that disconnected, because otherwise I'm not getting this torque wrench on there. Alright, now we need to go ahead and torque this to 80. Well, actually, before I do that, I'll go ahead and put the tie rod end back in. go ahead, torque this, which should be to 85 pounds. Go ahead, tighten down, put our brake line back into place. Bolt over here. This is another 12 millimeter. So next, all we got left to do is we got to torque everything on the coilover. So the front shock absorber, front lower suspension arm. This is going to get torqued to 100. So these 3 bolts need to get tightened down to 47 foot-pounds, and this bottom one is 100. Alright, so not going to lie, I could not get a torque wrench on that back bolt. I don't know how. I guess if I had a crow's foot, I could do it. I feel confident that I got it tight enough. If anything, I probably got it too tight. So the other 2 bolts I did get torqued. The front 2, the back one is not torqued, but it's not going anywhere. I feel confident with that. So let me go ahead, get the tire on, get the jacks underneath out from under here, and see what we got. One last thing I almost forgot to do is this tie rod end bolt. It's supposed to get torqued down to 53 foot-pounds. Alright, now we can put the wheel on, get it off the jacks, and see how we're sitting. Same now, we're just at 37.5. Yeah, 37.5, which is what we were over here, I believe. Yep, a little over 37.5. That'll probably settle. So say 37.25, maybe 37.25 probably after everything settles. So after about 500 miles, I'll come back in or take everything, recheck everything, check the torques on everything. We're right at just under 36 inches on the back. So you figure if we get another 1.5 inches, we'll probably be 37.5 like we are in the front as well. It looks like it is leaning back just a bit, but we'll get this back on next. Even that out, and then we should be done with this.